Today we're going to be looking at 5 different PCs you can build between the budget of $18,000 and $25,000. We're going to be trying to find a CPU cooler, motherboard, RAM, storage, GPU, power supply, and everything you need to build a full PC, trying to keep it as close as possible to the budget. Starting from $18,000, working our way up to $25,000. Let's get started. For our $18,000 budget, we have an Intel Core i5 12400, 6-core 12-thread CPU, base clock of 2.5 GHz, and a boost clock of 4.4 GHz. It's on the latest LGA 1700 socket, which means you can eventually upgrade to the latest CPU, which is the 14th gen CPUs, and that costs $3,483. To cool our CPU, we're going to be using the Deepcool GAMX AG400. It's a tower cooler that's able to cool anything up to a 220 watt TDP CPU. This one's in white, but you can also get one in black, which is the AG500, I believe. Our motherboard is going to be the Gigabyte B760 Raptor Lake motherboard, which obviously has to be also compatible with our LGA 1700 CPU. And it costs $2,730. It's a well-built motherboard. It's got 4 RAM slots, and it looks like it has a lot of input and output. It also has Type C, which I love to see in a modern motherboard. But overall, it should support most CPUs you can plug onto it that are LGA 1700. Next up, we have our RAM. We have the G.Skill Rib Jars 32GB kit of 16GB memory. It's DDR4. 32 megahertz. Just a reminder that 12th gen Intel supports both and DDR5, so whatever motherboard you get, make sure it's compatible with the RAM you're going to be getting. In this case, we chose a DDR4 motherboard, so therefore we need DDR4 RAM. This isn't the fastest DDR4 memory available right now. They go up to 4000 megahertz. So if you want to get something slightly faster, you're welcome to do that, but I prioritize capacity in this case. And for the rest of the parts that I'm going to be picking in this video, I'm going to be prioritizing performance over aesthetics or RGB or anything like that. So if you have any questions about why I chose a specific part, it's probably just to optimize the computer to get as much as we can out of the performance and utility. For storage, went for a 1TB SSD, the Clevcrash C910. It's a Gen 4 SSD, which means it has decent speeds. Not the fastest since we have Gen 5 now, but Gen 4 is still pretty fast, and your boot up times, your game load up times are going to be really fast. Next up, we have our GPU. I went on the new market here, but I'm pretty sure you can find a lot of better performing cards on the used market. But here I went for the Paddle GeForce RTX 4060. It's an 8GB card, which is a downgrade from the previous generation, because the previous generation 3060 came with 12GB until they introduced the 8GB model. But for the sake of our budget, to fit it into our budget, I chose this 3060. But if you go on the secondhand market, you can get well over a 12GB card. I'll put some options on the screen if I can find any. To build a computer, we're going to be using the GAMDS ROG C5 gaming case. It looks like an awesome case. It comes with 3 pre-installed fans. They're RGB. And it also has a display on the top which tells you the temperature. I believe it's the temperature of the CPU. Very packed with features for a budget gaming case, which is why I chose it, and it's $700. If you're not sure exactly how much your PC parts are going to consume in terms of energy, you can use this website, the Cooler Master Power Supply Calculator. You just plug in your parts and then it tells you how much power they're going to consume. For our PC here, it says it's going to consume 292 watts. So it looks like any 400 watt power supply will do us good. But I went for this Cooler Master Elite Next N700 power supply. It's 700 watts as the name says, and it costs $1,000, which means it's going to give us some room to upgrade our parts in the future. It's not 80 plus certified. So, and if we add all the parts together, we have a total of $17,630. Moving on to our next budget of $20,000, we have an Intel Core i5 13400F. It's a 10-core 16-thread CPU with 6 performance cores and 4 E-cores, so that kind of increases the efficiency and gives it a lot more cores to work with. The price is $4,000, and it's still on the LGA 1700 socket. We're going to be using the same Deepcool GAMX AG400 to cool the CPU, because again, it can cool a CPU of up to 220 watts TDP. For the motherboard, we got a slight upgrade to the Gigabyte B760M Gaming X motherboard. It's still DDR4. Not much of a difference from the motherboard that we used before, except that it has a pre-installed I/O shield. And the price of the motherboard is $3,000. Yeah. For the RAM, we're going to be using the same kit of 2 times 16GB RAM sticks, which gives us a total capacity of 32 gigabytes. But notice that this RAM is slightly different from the previous one in that It's slightly faster. The previous one was 3200 megahertz. This one is 3600 megahertz, which means a slight upgrade in the speed. Not sure if it's going to make a huge difference in the gaming performance, but always nice to have slightly faster speed. But you're welcome to stick with the same previous RAM and use the 400 or 300 difference for something else. For example, maybe adding capacity to your SSD or slightly better GPU maybe. For storage, we're going to be using the same Clevcrash C910 1TB M.2 NVMe SSD. It's Gen 4, as I said previously. Exact same SSD, so not much to say here. However, for the GPU, we upgraded to the latest generation XFX Radeon RX 7600, which is about 10 to 15% faster than the RTX 4060 in rasterization performance. So definitely a worthwhile upgrade. And I'm pretty sure you can get faster GPUs in the secondhand market. If you want to buy brand new, this is one of the few options available. I couldn't see an NVIDIA alternative for the same price. So this is really all you have around the 7,500 price range. But let me know in the comments if you've seen any other GPUs for about the same price range that are NVIDIA competing with the performance of the 7600. For the case, decided to go for a slightly different case, the Antec Air 100 ARGB case. It's a great looking case. It's a micro ATX mini tower case, which means it's super compact, but it's a great looking case. It looks like it's got great airflow. I'd probably add just 1 or 2 more fans as exhaust, just to give it a little bit of balanced pressure. Now, if we calculate the estimated power consumption of the parts that we're going to be using, on the Cooler Master website, we get 400 watts, which means it's probably safer to go for anything 500 watts and above. As a result, we're going to be using the same Cooler Master Elite N700 power supply, which is 700 watts again. That puts the total of our parts to 20,298. So almost nailed it perfectly. Moving up our budget slightly to 22,500, we have an AMD Ryzen 5. We're able to get an AMD Ryzen 5 8500G. It came out about a couple of months ago. They have better integrated graphics, so if you want to use the integrated graphics while you save up for a GPU, this would be a great option for you. But upgrading to Zen 4 forces us to go up to DDR5 memory, which we can definitely afford with the extra 2,500 in our pockets. By the way, this is a 6-core 12-thread CPU. To cool it, we're going to be using the Deepcool GAMX AG500. Pretty much the same tower cooler as the one we saw before. The maximum cooling capacity is up to 240 watts TDP, which is slightly better than the white one we saw previously, but pretty much the same, and it's 649, which is basically the same price, just a 50 Rand difference. For the motherboard, we're going to be using the Asus Prime B650 motherboard. I was surprised to see how affordable this motherboard is. AM5 motherboards were pretty expensive for the past year, basically, since they released Zen 4, but I'm glad to see that the prices are finally reducing for these series motherboards especially. But this is a micro ATX motherboard, and it's got a lot of input and output, as you can see. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Type-C, but I'm sure you can probably get a case that has Type-C if Type-C is a priority for you. But moving on to our RAM, obviously, since this is a DDR5 motherboard, we have to go for DDR5 here, and minimum capacity for DDR5 memory is about 16 gigabytes, I believe. So we found here the G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB memory, which is 2 16 gigabyte sticks, giving you 32 gigabytes of DDR5 6000 megahertz CL32 memory, which are insane speeds from DDR4. However, for storage, we're going to be using the same Clevcrash C910 1TB M.2 SSD. This SSD is going to be carrying us throughout the rest of this video, so get used to it. However, for the GPU, we upgraded to the XFX Radeon RX 6800. It's a lot faster than the 7600 XT we had previously, but it does obviously consume a little bit more power, so we're gonna have to account for that as well. But it's got 16 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory, so VRAM capacity is not going to be a problem for this one. And again, I couldn't find a NVIDIA alternative that would give us comparable performance to the RX 6800 XT. But if you want to go for NVIDIA instead, I think the best you can probably do is a 4060. maybe a 4060 Ti, but I think this is the best performing GPU you can get for this price range, unless you go onto the secondhand market. But for the sake of our budget, this RX 6800 is going to do us just fine, and it's brand new. We're going to be using the same Montech Air 100 ARGB case. Like I said previously, it's micro ATX case, and our motherboard is micro ATX, so it'll fit perfectly in there. Just make sure when you're purchasing a motherboard and a case, they're compatible. It's very important that you do that, otherwise you're gonna have a motherboard that doesn't fit in your case, or a motherboard that's too small for your case. You don't want to have one of those weird looking PCs. So going back to the Cooler website to estimate the power supply consumption, we have 402 watts. I didn't use the exact parts that we chose for the specific build because some of them aren't updated yet on the website, but our CPU is a very low consumption CPU. It's 65 watts TDP. So the AMD Radeon RX 6800 non-X is actually rated for 250 watts maximum power draw. So shouldn't be anything more than 400 watts total power consumption. But that wraps it up for this specific budget. The total for this configuration is 22,916, which is close enough to our specific budget. I don't mention this enough in my videos, but you gotta also account for your monitor, your keyboard and mouse. If you want to get decent peripherals, which you definitely want to get if you're getting this expensive of hardware, you want to be able to fully utilize it by getting the proper peripherals, because the peripherals are the stuff you actually interact with. Moving on to our last budget, 25,000. We have the AMD Ryzen 5 7600 non-XT, by the way. It's also Zen 4, of course, and it can boost up to 5.10 gigahertz, which is absolutely insane. It has a TDP of 65 watts, which is also amazing, given how much it can boost to. To cool our CPU, I chose this ID Cooling 240 millimeter liquid cooler, which is kind of just a little bit overkill for the CPU we have, because it only has a maximum TDP of 65 watts, and this can cool anything up to 250 watts, I believe. But I just chose this for aesthetic reasons, going for sort of an all white or silver and white kind of look to the PC, which is why for the motherboard I chose this MSI 5B650M gaming Wi-Fi motherboard. But if you're going to be buying a PC for the price of 25,000, you better make sure it has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and this motherboard definitely does, and it has a built-in IO shield. It looks well built. It only has 2 DIMM slots, unfortunately, but I guess we can deal with that. I mean, 32 gigabytes is already enough, which is the minimum we're going to be getting for DDR5 memory. We're going to be using the same G.Skill Trident Z5 RGB memory, the same 2 16 gigabyte sticks, giving us 32 gigabytes in total of DDR5 6000 megahertz memory, which costs 2,679. And again, we're going to be using the same 1 terabyte SSD, the Clef Crash C910. However, for the GPU, we upgraded to the SFX Radeon 7700 XT, which is about the same performance as the 6800 XT, but faster, and also it's the latest generation, which probably means it's more efficient because it's a slightly lower class GPU in the AMD GPU range. But it has slightly less VRAM. It has 12 gigabytes of VRAM, so you're welcome to use the same 6800 XT from previously, but I think this is the better option in terms of performance. And again, if you go in the secondhand market, you'll find a plethora of different options. We're just going to be choosing this one for the sake of the fact that it's brand new and comes with a warranty, and it also comes with a bundle of 2 games, which is awesome. For the case, again, I said we're going to be going for an all white aesthetic here, going for the Deep Cool CC360. It comes with 3 pre-installed RGB fans, and it's a very good looking case. It supports mini ITX and micro ATX, which is the size of our motherboard, so definitely compatible. And then going on the Cooler Master website to calculate the estimated wattage, we have 455 watts, which is why we went for this FSP Hydro Pro M700 watt 80 plus bronze semi-modular power supply. Slight upgrade from the previous one we saw, the Cooler Master one. As you can see, as the name says, it's semi-modular, which means cable management is going to be much easier, and who doesn't like good cable management? And then finally, calculating the total of all our parts, it sums to 25,207, which is right in our budget. If you're looking to build something a little bit cheaper than the builds in this video, you can check out this video on your left or your right to see what kind of PC you can build for under 15,000. But anyways, thank you guys for tuning into this video, and I'll see you in the next one.